opinion for rare health disorders at .org here at the International Students for Liberty 2015 conference. I'm joined by our good friend Carlos Morales. Now, if you don't know Carlos, you haven't been on our YouTube channel, which is not good. But Carlos is actually a whistleblower. He was working for the CPS and exposed many corrupt, illegal activities by that state-run institution. Now, I've been talking to Carlos. He's been doing a lot of research, a lot of homework. He also has written a book, but a lot of important information that Carlos revealed has been added upon because he's been studying specifically medical kidnapping. Now, Carlos, what is medical kidnapping?
Well, first, thanks for having me on your show. You know, the book came out recently. It's called Legally Kidnapped, the Case Against Child Protective Services, found at legallykidnapped.net. Now, the idea of medical kidnapping is essentially the catastrophic, epic in proportion, terrible actions committed by hospitals right now of calling Child Protective Services every single time a parent is deciding to try and get a second opinion for rare health disorders. As a result, Child Protective Services comes in, states that they have things like Munchausen's by proxy, saying that the parent is negligent, and then taking that child out of the parent's hands and placing them in the hands of foster homes.
And now, Carlos, you also broke the story of how CPS gets paid, and there's an incentive to take away children away from their parents. But is there any example that you researched or you found out with a particular person that is really shocking or that really just blows your mind with medical kidnapping?
Now, as far as the statistics of medical kidnapping, it's getting harder and harder to understand only because of the fact that they keep so much of the information secretive. Now, a huge problem, though, is actually a result of the Medicaid Act. So essentially, if you have a child with a rare disorder and the parent states, well, I can't afford to take care of that particular issue right now, or I don't want to go through the means that you are suggesting us to do, then the foster homes or the state can then take over the rights of the child, and everything is paid for by Medicaid. They continue to bill and bill and bill and bill.
So is that a part, did that change because of Obamacare?
Obamacare actually didn't have that much to do with it. The recent cases of medical kidnapping may have been going on for longer than we thought. It's just a result of more media coverage that this has actually started to come out more.
Now, I know the research and just finding everything about this specific issue has been extremely difficult. Can you tell us about your research process
media coverage
and some of the revelations that you found out?
Yeah, absolutely. I worked with some of the individuals from Health Impact News, medicallykidnapped.com, because those individuals are working incredibly hard to talk to parents who are having to deal with CPS, including the woman rather recently who lost the rights to her 17-year-old child because that child did not want to get chemo. A 17-year-old, the fact that we're even using the term child is absolutely ridiculous. That is an adult, and if they choose to want to not use chemo or to use chemo, that is their call. Instead, right now, that person is stuck in a mental health facility over the course of the last 3 months, and it's disgusting. How is taking away someone's freedom healthy for them?
No, the stories are just insane, especially the ones that you were revealing to us beforehand. What key important elements do people need to understand when it comes to medical kidnapping?
Well, just keep in mind the fact that at any point, Child Protective Services can be called on you. And it can be for a massive amount of things, including, which I saw in effect, individuals who admitted to their health practitioners that they had used marijuana at some point. Those health practitioners then go ahead and call Child Protective Services and they end up getting their kid removed. So keep more of that information kind of secret if you don't trust the individuals who you're dealing with. Yeah. And that goes for social media, that goes for everything. I understand the marijuana advocacy movement, but going out and posting pictures of yourself smoking weed while your baby's behind you might not be a very good idea.
Yeah, there's one particular case in Texas, and correct me if I'm wrong, the father used to smoke marijuana. There was a raid on his house. They found one joint. They took away the kid, and the kid died in foster care. Are there other cases, or do you want to expand on that case? And what other important information do you want to add to just this one particular topic?
Well, when it comes to the marijuana use thing, as I brought up on your show before, only 20% of removals from parents into foster homes are for physical or sexual abuse. The vast majority of cases are for drug use, and a huge chunk of that is for marijuana use. The amount of children who have been taken from parents and due to the fact they admitted to using marijuana, and then having those children then raped in foster home is absolutely staggering. And I hope for the betterment of individuals to recognize the fact that Child Protective Services is not an agency which helps out children, but in fact hurts them, and they've done it time and time and time again.
Yeah, and in the last video we did, you went over in great detail about how horrible the whole foster care system is and how it put kids in danger instead of actually protecting them. The first video we did, these are videos that are going to be in the description below so you could actually watch. The first video, you exposed the blatant corruption within the whole entire CPS system that you work for. Now, Carlos has also been working with people one-on-one, individually, helping them deal with this kind of state authority that has been coming into people's lives and has been sometimes doing a lot of wrongs. Any other piece of research that you want to put out there that to you sticks out on all the extensive work they have been doing on this very key important topic?
Well, it was actually doing your show that kind of inspired me to end up writing a book on the subject, which again can be found at legallykidnapped.net, that explains exactly how to deal with child protective service investigators if they come to your home to try and take away your children. And has already helped hundreds and hundreds of families to prevent children from going into foster homes. So I would totally recommend going to that first. If there's information there that did not help you, if you went through it and everything else, it didn't help, then of course you can message me, go through Child Protective Services Victim Support, which can be found online as well.
And then with medical kidnapping, so just to put everything together, it's specifically when people ask for a second opinion. Are there any other instances when this happens?
Okay, there's been quite a few other altercations in which this has occurred, including instances in which people were skeptical of things like vaccinations. When parents admitted to the use of marijuana when they were drug tested, say 2 months into a pregnancy, not realizing the fact that they used weed, say 8 weeks ago. Then it comes out in the test that they tested positive, and those children were then removed from those homes where they were stuck. And those children have been placed in foster homes where they're 7 to 8 times more likely to be physically or sexually abused, 6 times more likely to be placed in psychotropic drugs, 6 times more likely to die than if they stayed in an abusive household. Yeah. This is epically terrible. Yeah. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of people aren't acknowledging what is going on because it is attacking and hitting up minority groups and those who are impoverished. That's why 40% of foster homes are made up of Black children, even though they only make up 8 to 10% of the U.S. population as a whole. This is just an extension of a program which is designed to destroy the family.
Wow. Staggering facts. And with the changing drug laws within the United States, is it having an impact on this kind of medical kidnapping?
With staggering, can you say that again?
With states like Colorado legalizing marijuana, has this affected medical kidnapping in any way, shape, or form, or had no impact?
Well, actually, when it comes to the states like Colorado or states of California, as I mentioned before, even if it's legal, technically, they're still going after these families. And it makes it even worse in places where you have medical marijuana licenses, because then they go and attack those families who have those licenses. It's almost like a license for child protective services to come and harass and bombard you. Because since it's still federally illegal within our own society, marijuana is seen as somehow worse than alcohol, which blows my mind because both of us on statistics, alcohol is much worse for any individual than marijuana.
Thank you, Carlos, for those staggering facts. Is there anything else you want to expand on or talk about?
Again, just keep in mind the fact that Child Protective Services is a domestic terrorist agency which has been set on destroying families and children across the United States. Never call CPS if you're dealing with individuals who may or may not be using drugs. Don't call them in those particular cases. Be aware of the problem and try to defend yourself as best as you can.
Yes. And in the previous videos, we also went through solutions with Carlos. Carlos, thank you so much for all those staggering facts, all your research, your book, and also helping and volunteering people who need help in these situations for free many of the times. Where can people find you? Where can people buy your book? Where can people support you?
Yeah, again, the book is available on Amazon right now. You can go and just type in Legally Kidnapped, the Case Against Child Protective Services, or go to legallykidnapped.net. I also have another website called cpsvictimsupport.com.
Okay, powerful testimony.
It's available on
clearly identifies CPS as a domestic terrorist cell. It's worse than Al Qaeda ever could be. CPS. We've heard the numbers getting higher. We went from 700 to just over 1,000 a day. Children snatched up into the system every day. I think they said every 2 minutes a child goes into foster care. But domestic terrorist cell, very good. Coming out of Texas, couldn't work there over 16 months. He says any good social worker, they quit. We got another author. Again, this is author, social worker, blows the whistle, couldn't take it, causing more harm than he ever could fix anything. It's a child traffic racket. So very proud of what he's done there. I've got some another author coming in.
Hi, this is ALEAH Holland, the author of The Little Lynch, and it's been 2.5 years now since going into a domestic violence court and stealing my son. The domestic violence courts, their perception is that they're a champion for women and for children. It's a complete hoax, it's a complete scam. What they're actually doing is aiding, abetting, and protecting pedophile rapists, homicidal, suicidal killers, and men that brutalize and beat up women and diverting their crimes out of criminal court and bringing them into domestic violence and family court, which is actually a civil court. And moms like me, if we speak out against the crimes that they're committing inside the court, they steal our children and try not to let us see our children ever again. They stole my son when my son was 4 years old, and now he's 7. And the whole industry is just a fake industry. You got to be careful because my judge, Esther Morgenstern, was made the mentor, the goddess mother, by the DOJ after I filed a lawsuit against her, after thousands of complaints against her for serial family killing, after petitions against her. She was awarded and promoted up the chain for her case rigging, case fixing, training other judges of how to obstruct justice, how to be lawless and appear like you're advocating for domestic violence victims. The whole system is a fraud. And now you're going to have my judge training other judges of how to disguise crime as domestic violence. There's some real sick shit going on in there. Since having my son stolen, I've met over 3,000 mothers in the same situation, and we all came here for help, and now none of us have our children. They create a fake custody war, custody battle buzzwords, which is just to cover up sexual abuse on children and violence against women. There's nowhere to run to, nowhere to turn. I contacted the FBI, the DOJ, attorney generals, governors, mayor, Bloomberg, the DA at the time, Charles Hines. I contacted him over 15 times, Mayor Bloomberg over 20 times. I even reached out to nonprofit agencies, and everybody just give you lip service and want you to keep running around in circles. And when you stop running around in circles, you notice 3,000 other women going through it. It's a Holocaust and it's all a fraud. And I have a new book coming out, and all my money goes to this cause of getting exposure and abolishing the system, because it's a Holocaust and slavery. They have various schemes, various scams on how to terminate mothers and steal children. And if you know that, that's the plan of the devil, to destroy families and to destroy children. And it's horrible. Children are not being lost in the system. They're not being falling through the cracks. They're being stomped in the cracks and flushed into all of these pipelines. Many of our children are ending up in child porn and prostitution. Judges are selling our children to the prisons. They're selling our children to foster care agencies and psychiatric institutions. They're putting our children on dangerous psychotropic medications. And if mothers speak out like myself, I've been jailed. And I also had warrants put out for me for my arrest for no reason. And my judge designed a scam to do a
Hello, my friend.
Issue mafia style hit on me. What they do is when you speak out against them, they give you homicidal, suicidal acts, order protection against you, so that if he kills you, he gets off scot-free and is protected by them in the courts. People need to investigate it, look into it. Don't speak to the people involved in the courts. They're all in collusion with each other. Speak to the mothers of stolen children, like Safe Kids International, Cindy Dumas, Melissa Barnett, American Mothers of Lost Children, where you can go on mothersoflostchildren.org, Kathleen Russell for the Center of Judicial Excellence, Patrice Lenowitz, the Children's Justice Campaign. You have to speak to the victims. If you ever speak to the masters of disasters that's orchestrating these fake custody wars, these fake custody battles to cover up child rape and women being beaten, you'll never get a truthful answer. These are masters of disasters. They're the Bernie Madoffs of family and domestic violence court. And we have to end it before it's too late, because this is a shadow government. These are the hidden hands. And when you let rapists and abusers out into the public, which many men have then gone and raped other children and killed and murdered other people because the courts joined forces with them under the fake pretense of child protection. And it's all an act, it's all fake. And I just want to say thank you for listening to my story, and have a good day.
Okay, that was ALEAH Holland, A Little Lynched. Find it on Amazon. Powerful book. Very no holds barred documentary. What happens? CPS, how they work. Collusion, corruption. Don't talk to any of them. They're all in on it. Rigged system, top to bottom. It's all a hoax. Welcome to the real world. I got a playlist I'm going to be putting on here. Stand by. Got a new playlist going on here. Let's see. We are. Oh, we just start playing it. Here we go.
Hey guys, part 2. Part 1 is down below, and basically I gave you a very basically what I did is I gave you just a little short synopsis of what's going on at the border, and the fact that if I get banned off of Facebook, that's my goal actually. They shut me up all the time anyway, so I figured I might as well say everything now, right? So I'm going to show you something here. This is what's happening at the border. These are the people that are really pissed off.
For Child Protective Services in Texas from February 2012 to March 2013. I already was a libertarian whenever I joined, but I kind of bought into the idea that Child Protective Services would be the one agency where I could actually help children, though they were a branch of the government. They'd be the ones who would actually be helping. And I found that I was wrong on every single level. What I saw was not just normal bureaucratic corruption that's reported in the local news, but an entire system that was kind of built to fail. The power the investigators had and CPS held, which was kind of the power over every single child, and the ability to be able to destroy lives, is one that wasn't really handled carefully. I didn't quit because, as some people in the agency stated, I didn't have the toughness for it, or this takes special kind of people. I quit because what we were doing was not helping people, but instead destroying lives. I came to think of it in the same way Judge Brian Lindsay explained it, which was there's no system ever devised by mankind that is guaranteed to rip husband and wife or father, mother and child apart so bitterly in our present family court system.
Right. Did you have an instance that really captured you? Because I do remember when you first started working, you were telling me about some pretty intense scenes that I just I personally, I don't think I really could have handled that well, that you seem to handle really well, and
yeah.
Was there a moment, or was there something, or was there finally a build up that made you realize this isn't what I think it is?
Well, I mean, I guess my first case was very much my best case in the sense that it seemed like a clear-cut kind of situation where there was a drug bust at a home, and there were children there who were being forced to take a shit around the areas where the drugs were in order to prevent people from coming in to steal them. There was no running electricity in the house, but the drug dealers themselves actually owned like a Hummer and a number of nice cars. And there was a mother there who we were pretty sure was on drugs. The mother cried and screamed, and the children cried and screamed, and neighbors came out saying, please don't take away these children. Please don't send them to a foster home. Supposedly, we couldn't find any placement besides a foster home, which I still doubt even now. And it seemed like one of the situations where, oh, look, we're actually helping. But, in foster homes, you have a way higher chance of being raped, molested, abused, and killed than you do in an actual home where you're already being abused. And that one case was the best case I ever had. From there, it was cases where, there was maybe a father who was smoking marijuana 2 weeks ago, and then you end up having to set him up in a situation to where you're going to end up traumatizing the kids because you're going to tell the dad he has to leave the home. There was one case where there was a removal involving some children who were hanging out outside, and Child Protective Services found that to be improper. So the children will have to be removed from that case and thrown into a foster home. It was one case after another where what we were really doing was enforcing the war on drugs more than enforcing the war on child abuse, because the vast majority of cases we had were not for physical abuse, but they were supposed neglect or just cases that were completely made up. And then we'd have to ask these children questions regarding them being molested, abused, neglected, and emotionally threatened in certain cases where it wasn't even occurring whatsoever, really fucking up these kids. And we did everything through brute force rather than any kind of rational means, which is, I guess, to be expected from any kind of government organization.
Right. Were there any cases where you did encounter actual abuse?
Absolutely. But what I found was that the situations we then removed them from weren't much more helpful. And, it's especially when we're talking about foster homes, when you're talking about Child Protective Services, you have to think about incentives, because every single agency runs off of incentives. And in the family law system, you have an incentive actually to remove children and to find alleged child abuse, because without child abuse, no one continues to get paid. That's how you get funded. Now, with foster homes, the reason why they have an incentive for abuse is a different kind of abuse, which is the war kind of on children's minds. A foster home is funded, or at least a foster parent is given more money for every single disability that a child has. So if you have a kid who has just been removed from his home, has been removed from his family's community, his church, his school, and then you stick him in this situation where he's meeting these people that he does not know, he's very, very high stress. He might have been malnourished from the last home. So you have a kid who's going to be called ADHD, bipolar, schizophrenic, an insomniac, and a number of other disorders, and they'll pop you on a shitload of pills in order to remedy that so-called situation. So what you have is you have foster homes which are being incentivized to dope kids. Does that mean every single foster home is bad? No. Does that mean every single foster parent is bad? Absolutely not. I got some responses actually from some people who I believe were concerned that I was making that broad statement. I'm absolutely not. I'm simply pointing out the incentives and chances for corruption in Child Protective Services and Texas family, or just family law in general, which are not small. The whole basis for Child Protective Services is very much a kind of based primarily on the supposition that the parents that you're going to be dealing with from the get-go are guilty.
Right. So for the parents who are not, in fact, good foster parents, how do they go about getting all of these diagnoses for these children?
Well, the thing is, generally is a psychological evaluation, which can be done by some state doctor who states, oh, well, this kid has this, and this. We need to put him on such drugs. And this runs the same way that, it kind of works when it comes to parents yelling about their kids being a nuisance to them, right. Which is the pediatrician or the person doing the psychological evaluation basically is just trying to calm down the situation as quickly as possible, rather than doing it through counseling. And the quickest way possible is by sticking him on Seroquel, Zyprexa, Depakote, Adderall, or whatever the hell else prescription drug that has never actually been tested on children, in order to kind of zombify him so that he'll be calm for the moment. Of course, while disregarding the legitimate long-term side effects of these drugs.
Yeah. Well, I disagree with you in the respect that these drugs have in fact been tested on children, and they know that they have an effect they want, so that's why they use them.
Well, yeah, I guess when I'm stating effects, though, I'm talking about clinical research.
Okay.
You know, whenever you're doing a large group study for a psychological drug, whenever you're presenting it to the FDA, you're not allowed to do so on people that are under 18 years old. So instead of testing it in a real clinical, like in clinical research, instead it's just given to kids post hoc after the drugs have already been done. So you end up in a situation kind of where these children end up becoming the guinea pigs for pharmaceutical companies. Something I don't think anyone would say is a good idea.
Right. Okay. Well, what types of what tips do you have for parents who, if for instance CPS were to come knocking on your door tomorrow, and you're not a neglectful, not an abusive parent, I think that we all have this notion that they're this authoritarian who is from the state and that we need to let in our doors. Otherwise, we're going to be accused even more so of being neglectful or being, abusive. So do you really have to let them into your homes, or what sort of advice do you have for parents who, have to unfortunately encounter these agents unjustifiably so?
Yeah, so, this kind of list that I'm about to explain actually came with help from a website called fightcps.com, which I'm kind of going to be citing here because they are a very, very helpful website for parents who are dealing with child protective services at the time. I'd also like to state that the statements I'm making, I'm not trying to help people who are physically abusing and molesting their children. Those people need to be handled with, although Child Protective Services has shown time and time again that they're terrible at it. Now, if a CPS investigator comes to your home, number one thing here, stay calm. Do not just start yelling at the investigator and telling him to go fuck himself. The investigator will see any kind of hesitation as admittance of guilt. These people think they're brilliant and have a hard-on for pseudo-justice. In this case, I would recommend not lying, but possibly omitting specific things that are not relevant to the questions asked. If you choose to lie, that's your own choice. But there's certain things that you're going to want to admit. If you admit that you had a drinking problem, say 5 years ago, they'll use that as evidence against you, even if you hadn't had a sip in 5 years, and even if you had therapy because of it. The less said, the better. Child Protective Service social workers usually show up at your door with little to no evidence. If they are acting on anonymous tip, they literally have nothing, and they cannot get a warrant if there's an anonymous tip. They cannot get a court order on anonymous tip. The only thing they can use against you is information you give them for the most part. Don't let them talk to your kid while alone. Now, this is a tip out there for people who children are in public school, which I wouldn't recommend anyway. It's pretty much just an institution that dulls the mind and dulls the will. But if your kids are in public school, at any point, a Child Protective Service investigator is allowed to interview them without even letting you know. So it is important to let your kids know about CPS before they ever even have to deal with them, so that they know what to do and to not be intimidated by these workers who will try to intimidate them. Now, don't let them talk to your kids alone. You don't even need to let them talk to your kids whatsoever. And record everything with videotape if you can. This is not illegal to do and is incredibly important, because in a court case, it's your word against theirs. And as I will constantly remind everyone, you are guilty until proven innocent in family law. Secondly, know your rights. Until a warrant is given, which is incredibly difficult to do, they're not allowed in your house. If you talk a lot, your words will be twisted in such a way to be used against you in court. Also, if you allow this person in your home, which you should not do, they are not legally allowed in your home. But if you do, he will most likely find something there to complain about and use against you in court. A sink with 8 dishes needing washing can show up in his report as a sink full of dirty dishes and a filthy kitchen, which of course would serve to make you look bad to a judge. Therefore, just don't let these people in your house. You have no idea what an issue a CPS investigator can make out of a pile of laundry sitting next to your washing machine. Now, Taryn, I believe you wanted to talk about the kind of questions that would be asked in an investigation.
Yeah, what are the questions that tend to be asked by these individuals? And before we go into that, I want to ask, who are these people and what are the qualifications to become a CPS officer?
That is a completely valid question. I actually came from, I had a bachelor's degree in sociology.
Mhm.
How the hell that had anything to do with being able to understand under other individuals' psychology blows my mind. And it really speaks a lot to the fact that I met Child Protective Service investigators who had a degree in music and then are supposedly supposed to be able to investigate cases as if they have a master's degree in psychology. They're supposed to be able to understand if someone is lying. They're supposed to be able to not intimidate children in some of these cases, even though, not asking leading questions is incredibly difficult. They're supposed to not bring their biases in, which, by the way, is pretty much impossible. They're supposed to know which eyewitness reports to trust, eyewitness reports which are going to be incredibly fallible. I think it's important to be reminded of the fact that in many of these cases, you're dealing with people's memory, which is already going to be slippery as it is. At CPS, we had to make investigation reports based off of our memory, of the memory of someone else who many times is basing off of memory of someone else who had an inherent bias in their story. That story was then edited at least a few times until getting to the investigator. And with that basis, we had the ability to disrupt a family structure and traumatize a child. And we had to do all of this with 2 months of training.
With 2 months of training? So you have
2 months.
someone with a bachelor's degree in music who goes through 2 months of training and then
Pretty much.
knocks on houses and potentially disrupts homes and separates families. That's okay. All right. Well, anyway, no, continue. So going beyond that, what are the types of questions that these officers with their qualifications tend to ask?
Okay, so they're gonna basically what they're trying to fill out a risk assessment to be able to tell, okay, what are the main reasons why we should remove this child from this home?
Right.
One of the things they're going to ask you is family history. Okay, so they're trying to check to see if there was any abuse in your history. Now, what you need to realize that even if you were hit as a child, this isn't the time to bring it up. The CPS worker is not your therapist. Don't bring up, oh, I was molested when I was 6 years old. They're going to use that as evidence against you. Any abuse in your past will be used against you.
Can I just clarify?
For instance, saying something like,
adult or to the child?
Excuse me, I'm referring to the adult. Now, if you're an adult, right, and you say, I'm not an abuser, I should know what it is. I was abused as a kid. What this says to them is that you were abused, therefore you are likely to be an abuser. Believe me, no matter what terrible situation you went through as a kid, it's better not to mention any of this to a social worker. They will not feel sorry for you suddenly out of nowhere, and they're going to use this evidence as evidence against you. Remember, all information they're going to try to use against you. Secondly, what they're going to bring up is your drug history. This is another thing where I'm not going to suggest that you lie, just maybe omit some things. If you smoked weed 4 weeks ago, guess what? They can use that as evidence to the point of being able to take your child out of the home if they can stack it right. If they can tell it to their supervisor and her supervisor right, or maybe even to the judge who might be one of those radical, hey, most parents are fucking terrible kind of judges. Don't admit or omit the fact that you might have smoked weed 4 weeks ago or something along those lines. Don't bring up the fact that you used any kind of drugs in college. All of these things will be used against you. Remember, Child Protective Service investigators are not there for your best interest. They're there for their own interests and their own incentives, and their incentives are not to protect the parent. They also bring up alcohol use. Now, if you actually let them in your house, oh, well, then you have your bottles of wine or whiskey, whatever the hell else you have there. It's going to be hard to be able to bring up that you don't drink. What I would mainly suggest is to state, I rarely, if ever do, I can't even remember the last time I did. They'll try to ask you more detailed questions. Be generic, be general, don't go into too much detail, because the more detail you go into, the more chances you have of contradicting yourself. By the way, contradiction doesn't always mean that they're lying. Sometimes you just end up saying something incorrectly. Then they'll ask you questions regarding domestic violence history. If your husband's ever yelled at you, or if your wife's ever yelled at you, deal with that through therapy. Don't deal with that through CPS. Again, this is not a therapy session. They're going to use this as evidence against you. They might possibly drug test you as well if they're concerned about that. If the anonymous reporter stated that you were a drug user. Now, you can state that you don't want to do any drug tests whatsoever, which is fine, but just know that they can get a court order to make you do a piss test. And then a piss test is going to be more in depth. For instance, if you smoked weed 6 weeks ago, they might be able to tell that. Or they might just simply state, hey, why don't you do this mouth swab test? And these mouth swab tests, they're not great. In fact, if they swab your mouth, they can tell if you've smoked weed in the last 2 to 3 days, but any time before that, it's not going to really be able to tell anything. Most everything else is 24 to 48 hours. So if you did cocaine 2 weeks ago and a mouth swab test, it's not going to show it. Realize that drug contradictions may occur in these tests. For instance, if you're on a drug called Lamictal, it'll show up positive as PCP. Mainly with all these things, realize again that you're simply trying to get these people out of your lives as quickly as possible. Next, they'll ask you for something called collaterals. Collaterals are people that can back up any claims you make. In this case, you may want to give them some information. Maybe you'll give them a trusted, make sure trusted friend or a family member. Don't give them names of ex-husbands or ex-boyfriends. They're going to fuck you over. And there's many cases where they have. Have friends you know who know the system. Talk to people before CPS gets in contact with them. Tell them your story and warn them about Child Protective Services. While you're doing all of this, and Taryn, I'll let you go in a sec. I want to make sure I get this.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Keep a notebook. Keep a notebook explaining everything. Facts about your case, for instance, what really happened. Notes on every single phone call. Notes on every single meeting. Notes on every single visitation. Contacts with expert witnesses. Notes about the court hearings. On anything out of the ordinary that happens. Counseling appointment notes. Notes about the psych evaluation. Record of all drug tests and results. Reminders about the date of your next hearing, just as organization. By the way, if you miss any of these, you can get really screwed over, so don't do that. Visitation notes, foster parents' names and contact information if you have it, notes on all contacts or attempted contacts with your lawyer, and notes on all your daily activities. If all this still leads to you end up having to go to court, get a lawyer. I don't care about your financial constraints. If you care about your children, you will get a lawyer. Make sure that the lawyer deals with family law cases and not just some lawyer you find on TV. FightCPS.com has a list of lawyers who can help you in this situation. If the court demands that you do classes, do all of them. They'll look at any reason to destroy parental rights. Again, copy and print everything from your notebook and keep all the information in a safe place. In the world of the family courts, you are guilty until proven innocent, and you need to always remember that.
So my next question would be, do you even have to talk to these individuals in the first place? If someone comes knocking on your door, being an investigator with those types of qualifications, do you really have to communicate with them in the first place?
Yes, you do. So you can simply say, I'm not going to talk to you whatsoever, but say there's another family who hates you. Like they hate the fact you're a loud neighbor or whatever else. They can make up charges about drugs or abuse or pedophilia and a number of other things. And then they can finally get a court case against you, and you end up with cops at your home, and they can take your kids. So realize, again, the stay calm thing. Do talk to these people. Just be prepared before you go in. It's not the same as getting pulled over where you don't talk to the cop whatsoever. This is a case where it's all flimmy-flammy. Very few people actually pay attention to the many of the laws. And most importantly, CPS investigators hope you don't know your rights. And they don't ever explain to the investigators to remind parents of their rights. It's easier to abuse the situation, although in their cases they just simply state it's easier on them if you don't know your rights. It's corrupt from the very get-go.
Well, easier on them referring to the children who are in a particular circumstance, or easier on the parent who is being.
Well, according to them, they're the
Targeted.
child abuse warriors. So to them, anything that's good for CPS is good for children whatsoever.
Okay.
Anyway, I would like to remind everyone just to make sure you check out cps.com for any further information in regards to this. Taryn, I know we wanted to go in more about kind of free market solutions for something like Child Protective Services. But for now, I think it's important to just kind of get this for me. So make sure everyone to check out fightcps.com. Check out our prior podcast on Child Protective Services and the true incentives behind it. And if you need any kind of help and you can't get it through fightcps.com, email us at therenegadevariety@gmail.com. If this seems crass, I understand, but make sure to check us out on Facebook as well and on therenegadevarietyhour.com if you need any more information. Do not have any concerns about contacting me. Contact me as soon as possible. If you're a libertarian and you need help with any of this kind of CPS stuff, let me know. But be upfront, don't lie. And if you're the kind of person who's going to justify hitting children before you message me, don't bother messaging me whatsoever. Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you.
My name is Carlos Morales. I work for Child Protective Services in San Antonio, Texas from February 2012 to March 2013. And I'm guilty of what many other Americans are guilty of, which is believing that an agency, even though it's committed atrocity after atrocity, has the best interests of children and families in mind. I'm guilty of working for an agency that has hampered freedom repeatedly, that has done things that are so unconstitutional that it would make the DEA blush. I'm guilty of working for an agency that has promoted the drug war in a way, again, that would make the DEA blush. Because we've removed children for the faults of their parents, but those faults are them smoking pot while they were in high school. I'm guilty of working for an agency that has thrown children in foster homes, that has kidnapped children and thrown them in foster homes, where they are 6 times more likely to die than in abusive homes. I'm guilty of working for Child Protective Services. Within CPS, we hurt. We did not help. We did what Adolf Hitler always spoke of, which is to take control of children. Because by doing so, you take control of the future. Of course, following the Prussian system, the United States took over children first through public education, but now they do it through the state ownership of children, because within the United States, the parent does not own the child. The state does. Within Child Protective Services, there's always this claim that all the bad things that occur is because of a few bad apples, because of a few bad individuals. That's why they have a bad reputation. Not that the entire agency is based on the idea that it is important to remove children from their homes. It's based around the idea that you are guilty until proven innocent. We used force, not finesse, because that's all the state knows. That's all the state can do. It's kind of to take it back to me. In my first case, which was my best case, we went out to a home. When we got there were DEA agents swarmed around the house, and I could hear the DEA speaking badly about one of the parents. I saw the door. The door had been broken open. I got into the house, and there was this smell, this terrible smell, but I couldn't quite figure out what it was. The couches were flipped over. There were beer cans in the back. There was no electricity to knock out this terrible smell. I was just, it just stunk the entire house. I turned around the corner, and I saw another door that had been broken in, and I realized what the smell was. It was the shit of children, fecal matter, all on the walls, all on the floor, because that's where the drug dealers were storing their drugs. In order to prevent people from coming in and stealing it, it was a way to prevent that. Of course, this kind of disgusting display of actions by drug dealers would be impossible without the drug war, which is funded by the state. That's kind of outside the point. What occurred afterwards was I left the house and I heard a woman screaming. That woman was the mother. She was begging for her child. She was stating that it was because of a bad situation that they were in the home. They had only been there for a few days. We weren't able to figure out whether or not that was true, but we could tell that this woman was in quite despair. The CPS investigator I was with, though, well, she didn't really care. She showed a lack of empathy. A lack of empathy that is all around the agency. The woman cried, and the investigator actually laughed at her despair. I heard some other people speaking. They were running towards the house. They were the neighbors. They were family members. And they begged to be able to keep the children, to prevent them from going to the foster home. And even though supposedly Child Protective Services aims to keep families together, there wasn't even an attempt to check if these children should go with that family. They were yelling about how foster homes are places where children are routinely molested, drugged, and abused. And the investigator I was with yet again laughed at this idea. And in my mind, in my naive mind, I thought, we're the heroes today. We're the ones who are preventing these kids from living a bad life. We threw them in the back of my car. We drove off, threw them in a foster home. And again, I felt like I was a hero. But in those foster homes, those kids were drugged. They were abused. They were thrown into another public system. And they were no better off than when we first got there. In any case, they were much worse off. And you got to kind of ask yourself, who is an investigator? Who are these people who are taking children away? Well, it's not like they're well prepared for what they're doing. You see, in Child Protective Services, all you need is a bachelor's degree. And that bachelor's degree, in some cases, was a degree in saxophone jazz from Berklee College of Music. That, coupled with 2 months of training, is what makes an investigator. That investigator has to be a therapist because they have to be able to tell when someone is lying. They also have to be able to ask questions without bias to children who are 4 years old. They have to be a police officer because they have to go into highly dangerous situations or what they believe to be highly dangerous situations. They have to be a judge because they have to be able to dictate what's going to occur to these people. And they have to be a psychic because they have to use the powerful tool of violent central planning to dictate exactly what's going to happen to these people. Be able to guess with their wonderful aura of imagination what's going to occur to these children. There is a hero complex, and there's a culture of martyrdom that goes on in Child Protective Services, because what you're told is that you're the one who's going to help all these children. You're the one who's going to save all the kids, and you're God Almighty. You see, what happens is, it's not as Alex Jones puts it, where there's a bonus given for every single child that is kidnapped by a CPS investigator. No. You see, what happens is that you get reviewed every month. And for every child that has been kidnapped from their home, the investigator is given a raise by the end of the year. You see, the locus of control is always removed by investigator to investigator, from supervisor to the state, in order to not have to have the feeling of self-responsibility. And while removing that locus of control, you can always blame any kind of inaccuracies or terrible atrocities that occur on someone else. So it's never as in front, it's never as clear that simply you're given a bonus for every child that you steal. But in many, many ways, you're still considered the hero, because the person who removes 3 kids in a week, well, that person's applauded. The person who prevents 3 children from being removed in a week, well, that person's called lazy. And what I saw in Child Protective Services was not the prevention of abuse, because physical abuse was rarely what we ever dealt with. I'm an individual who recognizes and acknowledges the fact that physical abuse traumatizes a child in ways that we can't even possibly imagine. Study after study shows that even though we use the term spanking, it really is a violent action against children, but in Child Protective Services, spanking isn't what's incorrect. No, you're allowed to get away with that. What's incorrect is physical and emotional neglect, which are 2 terms that are easily abused, and they're abused by Child Protective Services. You see, if you admit to using marijuana on a weekend when you weren't with your kids, that's considered emotional and physical neglect. And that can lead to the removal of children. Because yet again, we're just continuously using the drug war to destroy these families. But what's even worse is the kind of evidence that we used. You see, an anonymous reporter can call in to Child Protective Services and say, oh, these parents, they're molesting children, they're abusing them, they're snorting cocaine off their asses of their children, they're part of the mafia, they have guns. You see, they can make up whatever they want, and Child Protective Services will go out and carry out the investigation, in which we will ask 4-year-old children if they've ever been touched by their parent. Again, we're using shaky evidence based off the memory of the memory of the memory of the memory of another individual. And supposedly with that, that's enough evidence to call for the removal of a child. And what's best is that even if we're able to disprove every single claim, if we can get the parent to admit to anything in regards to drugs, we still get the removal. So even if the claim and allegations weren't even in regards to that, we can still use it to take them away. And you have to wonder, why is it Child Protective Services has the incentive to take away children and not to help them out? Well, it's because for every single removal Child Protective Services gets, that's another grant that the state will give them. Because Child Protective Services is based off of this system. And the collusion between foster homes and CPS is even more tragic. Because you see, foster homes get more money for every single child that they get. This is how we have 650,000 kids right now in foster homes. But what makes it worse is that for every single diagnosis a child gets, that foster home is given more money. Now, these diagnoses, they're not the child being paralyzed. No. You see, what happens is you take a child, you throw them into a state hospital, and then that's where they come up with the diagnosis. You see, if a kid is removed from his home, his church, his community, his school, you throw him into a foster home where he's more likely to be abused, raped, or murdered, where he doesn't want to be, that kid might lash out. He might go against authority. He might not be able to pay attention to school. He might not be able to pay attention to the dictates of adults who he does not know. Well, it's not the situation that's wrong. It's not the social order that's wrong. No, it's that that kid is suffering from a mental illness. It needs to be remedied through the use of drugs. You see, that kid, according to them, has oppositional defiant disorder, ADHD, manic depression, schizophrenia, and insomnia. Well, that's now several diagnoses that that child has, which means more money for the foster home. And this is how you get 80% of foster children being diagnosed with a mental disorder. 80%. And those children, on average, being in those foster homes for 2 years. These drugs, they're not light. There are 9 million children in the United States on antipsychotic medications with over 40 side effects. And there's no clinical tests on these kids because they consider that to be immoral. No, they make guinea pigs out of children. They make guinea pigs out of people in the midst of their development, at the worst points of their life. And what's even worse is when your child ends up in foster home, well, that's when you have to go to court, you see. But the issue is that the judge and the prosecutor are paid by the same people. And those people will benefit from those children being removed. I've had judges check their email in the middle of court cases while a mother is crying. And I've seen judges laugh at these people because they think they're irresponsible or terrible because CPS stated so. It's so unconstitutional that it makes you kind of hurt because there's no jury. It's all the dictates of the judge. It can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to get out of a case. I was recently helping out someone who was in West Virginia, and it cost them $200,000 to try and disprove a claim that their child is being molested. And is there any kind of money given back to them? Well, of course not. Because this is a game to them. I've heard prosecutors, defense attorneys, and judges joking outside of courtrooms about the cases that they're involved in. So what you have to think about is, what do you do if Child Protective Services comes after you and your family? Because there's a good chance they can. We're all one call away if you're a parent from Child Protective Services coming after you. First off, if your child is in public schooling, get them out. But I mean, if you can't, what you have to do is let your child know about CPS, even if they're 5 years old, which sounds daunting, it sounds terrible, but you see, because Child Protective Services and the state owns a child, They can come to a child at any point and ask them questions. And that's what builds their evidence. You see, as an investigator, I would go out to public schools, remove a child from the classroom that he might now already want to be in, throw them in a room, usually a dark room, where the child is scared, and there's a large Hispanic man who's asking him questions regarding sexual molestation by his parents. The child probably wants to leave. He probably wants to get out. And he might answer yes or no to questions that he does not understand. And what that child does not realize is that that yes or no is sealing his fate. That's why you need to let your child know about CPS, and to know that no matter what question they ask, tell them to tell the CPS investigator, I do not want to talk to you. No matter what, no matter how pushy they are, just simply state, I don't want to talk to you. Now, if you've gotten to that point, what occurs next is the CPS investigator coming to your home. Hello, my name is Dan. I'm from Child Protective Services. Can I please come into your home? This is where you state no. Although I'm not the biggest fan of the Constitution, you still have the Fourth Amendment, and occasionally it gets to be respected. A Child Protective Service investigator is not allowed into your home unless he has a warrant. And if it's an anonymous report, well, then he has nothing. He can't get a warrant. The actual amount of paperwork and judges and everyone else that he has to go through in order to get a warrant is incredibly daunting to an investigator who's probably bored and inefficient in their job because he's a state worker. So don't let them inside your house. Because if you let them inside your house, they can use 3 dirty plates. Right? They'll use 3 dirty plates as evidence of hoarding and be able to remove your kid for that. And it's occurred. It's not a joke. So don't let them in. The investigator will then ask you questions. They'll ask you about your family history. They'll ask you about domestic violence. They'll ask you about how you were raised as a kid. And they might be gentle. They might be nice when they do it. But they're not your fucking therapist, okay? No matter what has occurred in your life, do not admit that you were abused as a child because they'll use that as evidence against you. Do not admit that your husband ever hit you because they will use that as evidence against you. I was dealing with one case, this was actually in Texas, where the mother admitted that her husband had hit her. This husband, though, had been out of the house for 3 years, and they still removed the child because they called it a risk factor. So don't admit to anything. Secondly, record the interview. No matter what, get a recording device, get out your phone. Most people have smartphones, but if you have even a tape recorder they can buy for $1 at a Goodwill, use it. Because the interview that is given to the investigator, well, it's not given word to word. That's not how the report is written. It's a summary of the investigation. So based off of the biases of that investigator, that's how they write the report, a lot of times through memory. And then they'll use that against you. So make sure you record everything. Say as little as possible. They're looking for contradictions. Most importantly, don't trust them. They are not looking to help you. They are the enemy. They may ask for a drug test. Now, this is where you have to decide. Usually what they have is an oral drug test. They put it in your mouth. You have to wait like 2 or 3 minutes until the saliva gets in, and they'll be able to tell what drugs you're on. If you have not used any forms of medication in the last 3 days, if you have not smoked marijuana, used Quaaludes, or any other drug in the last 3 days, you're probably going to pass this test.
Okay, we got a live. Go ahead. We see you, family first, forever.
Hi, how are you?
Pleasure.
Great. I agree with everything that you're saying, and I feel you're a frontline warrior for the Lord, and where the good man at, and it's good to hear you standing for the children, so you don't see it or hear it, and I support everything you do. I pray. There's 3 prayers in the Bible that I know about. The first one says, Our Father. So he's our Father first. That makes us brothers and sisters, and you're standing for the innocent. And I stand behind you, and I know you're a frontline warrior.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Yes, that was Carlos Morales been speaking, but we are the CPS News Network founder and promoter. So yes, Carlos Morales exposing CPS. Family First Forever. Is that a group?
No, it's just
Got it.
my email. My email.
Yeah. Temporary handle. Great. Yeah. Standing for humanity. Pure humanitarian issue. There's no refuge for anyone within any part of the judicial, police, law enforcement, lawyers. It's really nowhere to turn unless you have 50, 100 grand to really fight, and you can still lose, but anything goes. That's the system. We are trying to showcase the horrific abuse of kids like no other. Anyone should be able to see this one time and say, oh my God, I think all foster parents should get out of the business now. If you know of a foster parent, let them know. Get out. Stop holding children hostage.
I agree. It's called cognitive dissonance. That everybody turns a blind eye. How can you turn a blind eye? How does it not shake? Where do we sign up for this war to protect our children? I just don't know how people can. The Bible speaks of veils being removed. They must have veils on their eyes. I don't know what else to say about it. It's just anger, to be angry that good men don't stand up to protect these children. It's unbearable grief that we labor off of our children's blood and back, and for men not to stand up, it's unbelievable. Where do I sign up for this war?
A pleasure. Yes, there are no legitimate leaders anywhere. We can't find them. I can't find another good man that well, there's I could say two hands, maybe 10 people nationwide of fathers that protest or just really try to ring the bell, the siren, try to do something but I can't find anyone at my level.
Amen. John Wedger, have you heard of him? Shout out to him. He's boots on ground. He's real deal, frontline warrior. He's in the UK. Have you heard of him?
No, but we love people from the UK. Are you from the UK?
No, United States, Arizona.
Got it. Arizona. We know about Arizona, the hotbed, the massive scale. I think they have 16,000 foster kids, Arizona. Horrific crimes, the desert, well, anything goes, like the tumbleweeds. How many foster kids are buried in the desert? Mass missing children there in Arizona. They are said to take them off missing foster kid list after 6 months. Are you familiar with Arizona?
Yeah. Apparently, we used to rank number 4 for child trafficking. From what I hear, we're number 1, and from a certain point from my state, I hear it's like less than a 2-minute window before they're never seen again, statistically. Yes. How do we combat it? Underground tunnels. We're a border state. This is another thing on how they're separating the families is at the border. How do we go into these places and protect the children? I'm here, line me up. Father, hear our cries. Not one more child. There's a story in the Bible that it says there's not another day existed. The sun and the moon stopped at the same time due to prayer. Why not? If it stopped at the same time, a child is more valuable. Yeah.
Craig Sawyer there, Veterans for Child Rescue, Arizona, lives there, did movie Contraland, didn't mention foster care, CPS throughout an hour and 40 minutes of a movie talking about child trafficking. But he had time to go to Thailand. He had time to go to maybe some other country, but he should have spent at least a third of that movie at CPS talking to directors. Why is this? How is this? Why are you violating the Constitution? Why are you breaking rights of families? Why do you have parallel investigations with a special victims police investigations and a CPS investigation? How can you be running two different types of investigations for the same thing? One agency totally corrupt, secret, unconstitutional, and one where you stand a chance with a jury of your peers, possibly in a claimed constitutional environment. Lots of questions. He didn't go and address any of those, but he has said other things. He knows that that across the board, high level officials are covering for it all. Everybody who's not talking about it, he mentioned, is complicit in one way or another. So that's how you have to call it all out. That anyone in a public service position, specifically child abuse, and any kind of terrorist acts against children or families responsible for public safety, they're complicit with it by not saying anything, and they all pretty much know that they'll lose their job if they defend children from being trafficked.
Amen. I agree. My dad's a fire chief here in Arizona. His wife actually worked for the Child Crisis Center over 28 years. And trust me, I don't stay quiet. And what is being done? There's no one. Everyone turns a blind eye. No one wants to hear it, believe it. Are you kidding me?
Just this picture.
Cognitive dissonance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, talk about.
And they will answer for it. They will answer for it under God. It says, let the righteous smite me, and they will be accountable. They are going to say, did you help when she pleaded? And nobody. They're more worried about their riches. And, it says heaven, the streets are made of gold. It's at our feet. Adrenochrome, it's the child trafficking. It's not money that makes it go round. It's off our children's blood. Why can't they see, God? The serpent's full of lies.
Sure. Get that bullhorn. Confront anybody, police chiefs, anybody, officers, any politicians. Why aren't you doing anything? And watch them run to their office and close the door like you're a Looney Tune. Not want to confront you, not want to talk about unconstitutional war crimes against children. I'm going to try to play something here. I got the Craig Sawyer interview.
Let's get basically off the books completely and sold outright as a piece of property. And that's Adrian. There are child abductions on a constant basis, but it is more prevalent now that children are either taken as runaways, they are met and mentored from bus stops and train stations, places that youngsters.
Okay, that's Craig Sawyer, Arizona, Veterans for Child Rescued. It says that the NSA, the CIA, the military-industrial complex have no connection to the president. The president doesn't rule over them whatsoever, has no directives with those agencies. They are not in alignment with America's agenda. In that we need integrity, officials, voting system. The people need to vote, but how can you vote if you don't have a legitimate vote? It's rigged. You have nothing, and you never will have anything. And you have a private Federal Reserve System, and you have a military-industrial complex, NSA, CIA, FBI, completely separate from the president. He doesn't have. They don't work for him. He works for them. That's the deep state. Let's see. Are you still there, caller?
Yeah, yes. I feel adrenochrome, it'll get you higher than heroin, higher than meth. The younger you are, the purer the blood. That's why they sacrifice the babies, they drink it. It's all of them are involved. All the elite, all of them worship the evil one. It talks about the abyss being open. We are end days. We are frontline warriors. In prayer, I come humbly to your feet, Father. Hear our cries for our children's sake. Not one more child.
Yes, we ask for immediate surrender, no different than a war, ceasefire, restore the Constitution. We've been overthrown decades ago. So lots to talk about. Again, Arizona, the crimes against children over there. Yeah, they sell so many children online. Arizona Heart Gallery of America.org. Everything's in your face. Cognitive dissonance. Okay, we're familiar with that. And yeah, it's also that I don't want to get involved. it's too much for me. I don't want to hear about it. I want to live my life I want to live my life without knowing about these things, without being involved in these things, without basically caring for other people. And it all starts with family. It starts with how the children are raised. It starts with their school. It starts with their churches. The churches are a massive failure across the nation. They've all sold out. Look at the cohesiveness of the silence of the churches. Talk to me.
Agree, 100%. 100%. You first build your home. Your home is your first church, and then it grows from there. And where are the good men? How could there be churches if not one good man? We must surrender all. It says it pleased God to crush Jesus on the cross. I feel it pleased him to crush him on the cross because he crushed the sin. He crushed. These men need to be crushed. Don't let you fail, but let your faith fail you. They need to fail. They need to be crushed because they're not standing up for their children. Without love, you have nothing. And they're turning their backs, men, on children being raped anally. How could you do it? Not one child is okay. And there's hundreds of thousands. That's what our world, that is what, it's not money. These elites, these altered DNA, evil one. We're at spiritual warfare. It's a blind eye, and I don't know how. The world, you're one in a million, like Noah. Oh, I don't know what to say, man. It feels so hopeless at times. He didn't come to forsake the world. I can't understand why he doesn't forsake mankind, because it's wickedness.
Thank God for the internet. Thanks God for our voice. Thank God for people speaking. Again, we foster war. We want to attack the grassroots, the foster child hostage takers, the ones that are saying we care about kids. Then you wouldn't be involved in a child trafficking ring that deprives parents due process rights over their children. Oh, but they've been abused so much. Were they charged with a crime? Not that I know of. They still visit the child 3 times a month, if that, maybe twice a month if they're lucky. And so they're holding children hostage. There's no hiding places. So yeah, just want to make sure no one's giving anyone any hiding places.
God created family as a protection, as a structure. I am a mother of 4. There is no safer place than for my children to be than under my protection. And that goes for every mother. It is, I want to say the word, inbred in us through Jesus Christ, through our Father. God taught us that. He gives us that spirit and that soul as a mother. He teaches us. There's no gentler form. I don't even know how to be a gentle mother the way God is so gentle. But through that, no wild animal will just stand. They will protect through death. And give me the spirit to love every child the way. And sometimes I get trickery, because if those pedophiles are part of their names written in the book of life, then clean them up, give them mercy. But they must fall too. They must be crushed too in order to enter the gates of heaven. So I don't know what to say, my brother. I weep every day. You're a smell of aroma of heaven. I don't see anything else.
Yes,
a few, like you said, 10. About 10 for me too. I have
10 people.
About that too, yeah. And half of them are on YouTube.
Yeah, we don't need too many leaders. We just need one answer, one voice. We don't need different ideas. We don't need reform. All we need is people to do their job and get some freaking integrity. Just like Craig Sawyer said. He said they have no integrity. None of these people. And they're all compromised. And without that, in a legitimate voting system, you have nothing. You can cry all you want. Your vote doesn't matter. It's a rigged system, top to bottom. You got people with no integrity that are compromised, either actively engaging in war crimes or being silent and knowingly claiming to be public servants. So yeah, we're in a revolution, and we hope that a lot of the spotlight of corruption, specifically police brutality, abuse, terrorism, bleeds into what they do to children, how they act as collection agents. And we need them to get off their ass. We need to call out the military for them to get off their ass. Stop playing like some are good. They're not all together. They're all silent. I would love to see a legitimate veteran group of 1 to 3 people. We'll say 3 people. We are the veterans for the Constitution, and it's not being followed, and have a group. But you can't find anything like that with the military, and none of this could be done without the Constitution being trampled on. Constitution doesn't matter. It's been thrown out the window. What good is it? I say we scrap the whole damn thing. What? No one's following the law. That's how they get away with this. And there's too much money going out there. 25 workers taking in money to traffic and abuse, terrorize, corrupt, and so we're going into the recession, the money, the poverty, the hyperinflation. Where's it going to go? What, how high is gas going to go? What is it? $4.25 now, where we live, SoCal. But it's the atrocities are going to get worse, and we need the government to stop channeling all that money. Again, Texas had a case where Health and Human Services, that issues all the checks, has no communication with the states. All they get is socials and pink slips for children, and deliver those checks. There's no communication or responsibility between Health and Human Services and CPS. So that shows you that they are the bankers, and CPS are the traffickers and the child launderers. They're laundering children, and it's all out there. And hard to find inspiration sometimes, but the internet is always there, and that it's the most powerful communications tool, and it hasn't been used like it could be. And here we are running on, they say gas fumes. I'm running on God fumes. God's fumes is what keeps this engine going here at the CPS News Network. God fumes, and that's what we run on. And we really hope that all of our hard work will. It does work. What we do does work. How we expose, how we talk about, how we discuss. They want to change the name of foster parents to resource parents. They have shortages of homes, but now they want to up the ante, pay them more money, put $400 million out there to recruit more adopters for the black market. So there's just it's a very uphill battle. But imagine if we had a $1 million donation to the network and what we do, and now we have a facility. Now we have 5 to 8 workers constantly proliferating the most impactful content anyone's ever seen, and that's what we need. We need financing. We'd like to get they $1 million a year. What's $1 million? That could fund a resolution to where I wouldn't have to do so much work, and you have a team of people, a team of proliferators, and all you do is tell foster parents to surrender the kids. And like I said, we want to get video of some foster parents letting the kids run out to their family, releasing them from their hostage captivity, and make history with the viral videos.
So, as far as sexual sin goes, the Bible speaks about it being man's greatest fall. And that even if you don't believe in the Bible, it is scientifically proven that every time a man leaves a specimen inside a woman, he leaves a part of his DNA in her brain. And God says, if you continue in sexual sin, he will turn you over to a depraved mind. What do you think it does when a man leaves a specimen in another man? Depravity. There's also a study out there, Harvard University, that in porn, in the front cortex of your brain, right front cortex, there's an eating enzyme that it literally eats your brain. Now, these are things that God speaks about, your mind over to depravity. None of these men have a right mind. None of these men should not be presidents. These men should not be running the world. They eat and rape our children. They should be thrown to the abyss. God, My God, who hung on the cross for all men's sins, said, go kill yourself, commit suicide. He even tells you how drown yourself if you hurt our children. Let me not be more righteous than my Lord who hung on a cross. It is known, ALF, electrical low frequency, that they can identify you by, of course, the cornea of your eye. Now there's a machine, electrical low frequency, by your auras, that it says when Jesus was on the cross to take courage, that it is well known that at a 200 megahertz frequency is well known to radiate courage. Give us the courage, Father, to carry on. It says one man is the majority. Teach me that humbleness, brokenness. He was completely broken on that cross. Don't break our children. Protect them. Give us the courage, Father, to protect them. Send me. I'll go. How do I go?
Yes, following let the rope and a stone take them to the depths of the ocean. It's a better place. Again,
God
no man.
says, I'm sorry if I may just say this 1 second. God says that sodomy is your mouth and anal. If you don't believe in the Bible, American Encyclopedia Dictionary definition is sodomy is an act against nature. Lies from the evil one. Even according to their American Encyclopedia Dictionary, sodomy is an act against nature, and this is what they're doing to our children. That DNA is being left in their brain. This is why the confusion is happening. This is why sometimes I don't blame a pedophile, because he was raped as a child and it's in his brain. You literally, I'm in the medical field. I've worked 15 years emergency room. My mom, my sister, like I said, my dad's a first responder. And it is scientifically proven that when a man leaves a specimen, you literally metabolize it through your muscles. You have muscle memory and includes it in your mind. It's a live specimen, not even to even mention the spiritual realms. These victims, these people go through things. Let us not judge. Let us have mercy. Without it, said the Bible says, mercy before judgment. Mercy before judgment.
Very fascinating. Yes, haven't heard that the DNA transfer into muscle tissue, brain tissue. Yeah, but
It's a life specimen. You literally detox it that way. I mean, what else do you do? That's everything you take inside your body, right? It's going, that's how I had 4 children. It literally comes out through your pores. And not to be stupid or anything, or, gross, or I don't know what better words to use, but it's actually even a protein. It builds my muscle. I've been married 23 years. Glory to be to my Father.
Yes, got it. And yeah, awesome. Do you have a webpage or a group that you're a part of?
No, I stand alone. Actually, my name even means that, to stand alone.
Yeah, we're more powerful. That's how you can really be more powerful standing alone. You don't have any distractions and nobody holds you back but you and yourself. So you're just like full bore. You're more powerful alone as an advocate than many times with other people, where you're constantly distracted and not focused on the core, on yeah, just executing. But yeah, powerful imagery coming in on the pictures. Again, we put all the pictures in Google Photos. We need volunteers to go through and separate all the. We just want to get all the faces. This is the sister of Natalie Finn. Her sister died in her lap, starved to death in a room. She said when her sister's lips turned purple, she knew that we turned a new corner. She died in her lap, and found in a room with a adult diaper. This is a sister, but you know, what should surprise you? What should surprise you in this day and age, with the war crimes that we witness? And there isn't anything, and we are desensitized, and we lose empathy, and we are conditioned to accept, and conditioned to accept a lawless government, conditioned to accept a corrupt voting system, conditioned to accept we have no connection to any part of our federal government whatsoever. So we're constantly, everyone's being conditioned to accept it. You're not the Federal Reserve. You're not part of a legitimate voting system. You don't stand a chance. Everything can be rigged. Everything can be compromised. Everyone can be bribed. Everyone can be threatened who doesn't fall in line. And everyone knows this. So until we have integrity, until we have a legitimate voting system, all we can do is try to get the foster parents holding children hostage to get out of the business. Like it's just the most evil thing you could be doing is holding children hostage from parents who did not commit a crime. There's no crime committed. You're holding a child hostage. And yeah, just going back to Craig Sawyer, his interview.
Go when they run away from home or taken out of the foster care or child protective services system and sold outright as slaves. And so, you know, one scenario would be a young single mother working hard to provide for her kids. CPS can come in and determine that she's an unfit mother, take her kids, put them in a foster care system. Children may be passed from one foster care family to another. Some may be loving, some may be abusive, but eventually, after a certain number of handoffs, the kids get basically off the books completely and sold outright as a piece of property. And that's where it gets really, really ugly.
So there's some form of trafficking taking place within America's foster care system.
There is, and we mean to investigate much more deeply on it, but some people are saying as many as 80% of the children being trafficked for sex in the United States right now came from the CPS system. So we do have a problem there to dig into. As
we estimate there's over 1 million rapes and molestations every year, very easily in foster care alone, with an estimated 400,000 or 500,000 kids in foster care, and that's not even counting the black market adoptions, no monitoring, but very easily over 1 million rapes and molestations. These children are being abused, molested daily, tortured. The younger, the more torture they get. They're hung upside down. There are tapes on their mouths, ropes. The most insidious forms. I mean, we got foster parents raping babies the same day they arrive and videotaping it and sending it across the nation. San Diego, Lufts. His last name's Luft. Look up San Diego foster care, Lufts. We still got the ankle bracelet, the birth leg stamp on his leg, and being molested and videotaped. And we just so they're just not safe. If foster care never worked, let's shut it down. Stranger danger, stranger's house, children being held hostage for money. Take the money out away and watch how many foster parents, all those great ones that just want to help kids, watch them get out of the business. I think you'd have less than 10%, maybe 5% would continue fostering if it wasn't for the money involved in the trafficking of those kids.
As a nation, we've got to look after our kids.
That's a crazy number.
Yeah.
80% coming from within, because that system is so regulated. It's so above board. I mean, how many hundreds of people have to be aware of what's going on to run that kind of system and facilitate these type of dark activities with kids and basically in plain view?
Yeah, well, it's been disheartening for me to learn of the level of corruption, not just in that system, but in the federal government, just about at every level in our society. We have a breakdown of moral and ethical values in the United States. Our culture has been targeted deliberately to break down our moral structure and our core values that have made our country so strong, the family unit, on and on and on. And this is just a symptom of it. We're seeing greater degrees of corruption, and in that, things just inevitably turn bad. So yeah, a lot of people have to know about it, but there's a lot of money. CPS, there is a financial incentive for them to take the child from their biological parents. There is no financial incentive for them to return the child to their biological parents. In my opinion, that's a counterproductive dynamic. Maybe that can be revisited as well. Somewhere there's a perfect solution for it. We just have to find it.
So
yeah, it doesn't mention anything about the constitutional right violations, the dictator courts. Talks about children being taken away, no incentive to give them back. Why not an incentive to keep them together? Again, 95% claims of neglect, no evidence of any crime, and the kids are being taken and trafficked.
How high does this go?
I would say it goes all the way to the very top. If you dig into even some former presidents and their organizations and the accusations that are very prevalent,
Such
the
as?
indications are very concerning. Well, the Clinton Foundation and the child trafficking out of Haiti, the internet is full of cases and evidence and accusations that need to be investigated very thoroughly to separate fact from fiction. Somewhere in there is the factual evidence to demonstrate what's actually taking place, and we the people deserve to know what that is, and so do the children.
So, I mean, you've been doing this for a couple of years now. You obviously have a pretty strong background with the military, special forces. Based on what you've seen, have you seen any indication that allegations of corruption in terms of human trafficking from somebody that high up are actually true? Do you find that they have merit, or is it something that needs a more thorough investigation in order to be able to make that determination?
Well, from my investigations, I'll tell you this: child sex trafficking and organized crime in general cannot prevail at the level that it does without a lot of top cover. And that means media top cover, it means legal system top cover, it means political top cover. So a lot of our governors, mayors are complicit in different states. They know what's going on, some of them benefiting directly financially from it, others just looking the other way to avoid threats or to take bribes or other financial incentives. And so it's just a matter of getting quality people back in office to occupy those seats that will carry out the campaigns that they ran on to honor their commitment to we the people.
Yeah, so that's what we want. We want a legitimate voting system. We want paper receipts, receipt ballot, paper trail, phone voting. Everybody gets a certificate of vote where, it's the paper trail. It's everything they don't want. They want you stupid. They want to give you a sticker and a lollipop. Say, have a good day. You're an American hero. What a patriot. You voted. What a bunch of crap. Totally rigged system. Don't stand a chance without any legitimate voting system. But our only chance is to foster war, to demand foster traffickers, surrender children, stop being involved in what they're doing. And everyone's going to know what they're doing, and putting the spotlight on them that they're abusing children by holding them hostage, by drugging children, by being a revolving door of foster care, and that it never worked. Foster homes, it doesn't work to put them in separate homes. We want Nancy Schaefer resource centers nationwide. It's very simple. Resorts where any child at any age can go and get a break from the city, from the streets, from the trafficking, from the abuse. We don't want them isolated in multiple thousands of homes all across hundreds of thousands of homes all across the United States where they're not supervised, they're alone. There's nothing worse. Caller, go ahead. Did you have anything you wanted to say?
I was just thinking that I watched an interview on
I've lost your audio. Okay, looks like you got cut off. Okay, Save Our Children. Christy, we see you. Thank you, Angela, for being here. Break the rule all the time. Yeah, to the streets. Yeah. Yeah, the military. Powerful and corrupt. They're awful, horrific what they're allowing to happen. Protest until they're shut down. Yes. Every day, 12 o'clock, prayer. We are at war. Biden. Best thing to do is don't follow that Biden presidential crap. It's all just stuff to keep you distracted and not focused. Ignore it, please. Get off the Biden son. What a bunch of baloney. What a bunch of crap. That's how they rule. They rule by lies, keeping people separated, keeping people focused on disinformation. Thank you all. We're going to cut it out here. CPS News Network, sign out 310-512-21. I think I left that link to Craig. I'm going to leave it again. You can watch the whole interview. Here you go.